I'm thrilled to spend a few minutes speaking with you today during Airbyte's conference when Michelle reached out and asked if I would be interested in talking about some of the themes we're seeing in the market. I was quite excited. We're seeing Airbyte and ClickHouse surge in popularity. I'm sure many people here in the conference are using both technologies. And it was an interesting thought exercise to come up with a statement, and we actually chose a question that we would put on a billboard for data practitioners to read. And that question is, who needs a traditional data warehouse when you can get real-time analytics at scale? So I'm one of three founders of the company ClickHouse Inc., behind the very popular open source project ClickHouse. I'm the CEO. ClickHouse was developed about 10 years ago and then open sourced 5 years ago. And we've seen it surge in popularity. So a lot of similar themes that you're seeing with Airbyte. And we're thrilled that ClickHouse is both a source and a destination for Airbyte. And so we thought we'd stick with the billboard theme and show a picture of a billboard this was a picture taken by one of our engineers at Victoria Station in London, recently ahead of Big Data London. And it's an interesting statement it's an interesting fact that the 1971 Italian Grand Prix was won by 1% of 1 second. So even 50 years ago, speed was so critically important, not just speed, but speed measured in milliseconds. So the fact that a Formula One race over 50 years ago could be determined by 10 milliseconds. I've been in enterprise software for about 25 years, the last 20 of which have been spent at two companies, a little over 12 years at Salesforce.com. Joined that company, was a small startup, and then a little over 6 years at a popular open source search company called Elasticsearch. And so we thought, well, if we were going to do some billboard advertising, which in my experience is the most inefficient use of marketing dollars, what would we come up with? And it was something to the effect of real time, the new database paradigm, or something along those lines. Now, I'm not suggesting that traditional data warehouses are becoming obsolete, or this next generation of cloud-based data warehouses will be upended by real-time analytical databases like ClickHouse. Quite the contrary, I'm actually suggesting there's going to be a convergence, and we're already seeing it in the market today, where cloud-based data warehouses are hearing from their customers and their users the need for real-time capabilities. And we're seeing the same thing with traditional transactional databases, that while they can be very effective at storing transactions, they can be less effective for analyzing the data that's stored within those. So I think if you looked at a Venn diagram of those three technologies, cloud-based data warehouses or traditional data warehouses, OLAP databases like ClickHouse, or transactional databases, you're going to start to see considerable overlap between the three. So what are those key elements of real time? What are the key attributes? Well, the first is that these offerings are serverless and hosted, and not one or the other, but both, that they've got both horizontal and vertical scaling, abstracting away the complexities of running software. And that's just not a hosted database where the end user needs to specify the number of replicas or the frequency or the version or the sharding or the number or the amount of memory, but the service determines that for you. And it takes this consumer internet scale and it applies it to business data practitioners, being able to query those massive data sets in milliseconds. It wasn't that long ago where a petabyte of data was a massive amount of data for one of these relational databases to handle and to query. And now we're seeing hundreds of petabytes of data a day being analyzed with the results coming in milliseconds. And SQL maintains itself as the global standard, as the lingua franca of data, surviving the NoSQL movement, where invariably the majority of those NoSQL databases ultimately tried to author their own query language. What are some of the additional attributes of real time? Well, it requires that practitioners can access their data through every stage of the data pipeline. And that's really where Airbyte shines, and the integration between Airbyte and ClickHouse is so valuable. And it ultimately opens up new use cases. Common use cases we see are around observability, sentiment analysis, web scale analytics, fraud detection, but ultimately being able to apply these analytical workloads to all of your data sets will lead to better products for your customers. But how do you do so in a cost-effective and efficient way? Well, it requires careful thought around how do you store and compress your data, and then how can you retain that data in a cost-effective way so that you can actually run historical queries alongside your real-time data as it's piped in using a technology like Airbyte, whether it's Airbyte that you're running locally or using Airbyte Cloud. As I mentioned earlier, there's a tight integration between the two technologies. We launched our first cloud service, ClickHouse Cloud, about a month ago. And you can trial it yourself. Go to clickhouse.com. You can start your own free trial with free credits. You can actually test the integration. It was one of the first integrations that we authored with Airbyte to be able to run Airbyte Cloud and ClickHouse Cloud, Airbyte for ETL and ClickHouse Cloud for real-time analytics. So hopefully I have a wonderful conference. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me, and we'll see you at various community events around the world.